What's up, you beauties? Welcome to High and Wide Hockey YouTube channel, episode 13 of season 7. I'm your host, Jim Michkov, joined as always by the one and only Jack Smith. And if you're catching us live on YouTube, make sure to smash the subscribe button, hit the alert so you never miss a show. For all the podcast listeners out there, don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcast or Spotify so you're first in line when the newest episodes drop. The Flyers return home tomorrow night from a mini road trip out to Columbus. And speaking of road trips, Jack, maybe you can tell us a little bit about Fans of Philly.
Jim, I thought you'd never ask. Flyers fans, we've got something special for you today. Looking to take your game day experience to the next level? Then look no further than Fans of Philly. With over 14 years of experience, they're the go-to team to putting together an unforgettable travel package for die-hard Philly sports fans. Why Fans of Phillies, you ask? Let me break it down for you. These guys have spent years building the best relationships with the bars, hotels, teams, transportation, you name it. Every trip they plan gets better, and trust me, they'll make sure your experience is top-notch. Whether it's scouting out the perfect hotel, finding the hottest nightlife, or securing the best seats in the arena, Fans of Philly has it all figured out. They know how to make your trip an absolute blast, so go on and head on over to fansofphilly.com. That's fansofphilly.com, and book your next Flyers road trip today.
Well done. What a recovery from last week.
That's for sure.
All right, so we're a little bit late getting on tonight, so we apologize to anybody that was kind of hanging out for the last hour or so. We missed you guys on Monday this week. It's been a little bit of a whirlwind of a week for me in particular, but we're here later than expected. Hopefully you guys are able to come on and still hang out with us. We have a lot to talk about. The Flyers seem like they're getting their shit together a bit. They're struggling in third periods. We have some players returning from injury. Michkov is an absolute rock star, so he's going to be a big part of our show today, as you can see from the YouTube thumbnail if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not, make sure you get on over to YouTube. We have some questions. If there was one Flyer that you guys would like to move, who would it be and why? Make sure you get that in on the comments. We'll talk about that a little later. And Jack, I want to know what your trust meter is from a scale of 1 to 10 on the Flyers 3 goaltenders. We'll get to that later in the show, but a lot of good stuff coming for you guys on the show. First off, let's get to some of the facts. The Flyers with a big win last night over Columbus. Michkov, Jack, is now a point-per-game player in the NHL in his first season. What do you make of that?
Jim, I'm going to tell you what I make of that. But before that, I just want to show you something real quick.
Sure.
Courtesy of my birthday and upcoming Christmas.
Happy birthday, Jack. Look
at that bad boy. Look at that bad boy.
That's a thing of beauty right there.
Thing of beauty. Boom. Okay. Anyway,
that
now that that's out of the way. Yeah, I mean, Michkov is as advertised, I'd say. And I cannot help but think of certain people from the Montreal area when you see what he's doing right now. I saw Slafkovsky's points posted, and Michkov's got a solid 10 more points. And it is just, he's doing everything and more. The only thing I will say is a lot of like early ballots for Rookie of the Year don't have Michkov winning it, which is, I mean, just out of respect, like, come on, like he's got to be the guy. Like you can't take any, I don't care about underlining numbers. He's been one of the major reasons this team is where it's at and where they're at and what they've been doing. He's a point per game player. You've said it, 19-year-old, although he's just turned 20, point per game player. He's not even from this country, culture shock, all that things taken into account. Incredible. And not to mention, I believe I saw I think it was 13 games since he was benched, he has 17 points. So yeah, that is definitely paying kudos. Paying dividends. So kudos to the coach that everybody hates for some reason. Never understand it. So yeah, so thank you, Occam Razor, for the happy birthday. I am 37 myself. Good God.
7 years young.
Yes. And we started this podcast when I was 30. Shit. Can you believe that? Whole 30s. Whole 30s have been high and wide. So not to get too personal there, but yes, it is a good time to be a Flyers fan because no matter what they do this year, you can look at one single player on this team and say they have a future and it is bright. Quite as bright as my sign. Oh, God. God in heaven. Woo.
Let's talk a little bit more about that because I would agree that the future is bright with the Flyers. And that's somewhat contrary to what at least my Twitter timeline would have fans believing. It seems like there are still, I don't know if it's growing or not, but there are still people out there that don't like what's happening with the Flyers. I'm not sure what's expected, but even in the games they've lost recently against Florida, Boston, excuse me, maybe Utah. They didn't look the same as they did against Boston and Florida, in my opinion, against Utah, but Flyers were playing with those teams and should have won, right? There are good things in those games, even though the result wasn't what we wanted. And I think during a rebuild, excuse me, I don't know why this is happening, but you want to look for the good things throughout a game because they're not a team that's going to be good from start to finish every single game, especially against teams like Florida and Boston. They're a young team, a smaller team, and I'm hoping this doesn't turn into a trend, but they need to learn how to finish off good teams in the third period. When they're playing well against them 2/3 of the game and they take a lead into the third, they need to find a way to win these games. And that's, in my opinion, where they are right now. They're a decent team, a decent young team that is trying to figure out how to take that next step into being a good team. I think the pieces are there. We're seeing guys like Tippett and Forster, finally come around a little bit. Tippett's been on fire. Forster now has 7 goals on the year. So the depth scoring is showing up a little bit. We mentioned Michkov. Konechny coming off the big deals, got 34 points in 29 games. There are good things happening within this team. The result is not always what we want yet, but I think that we're on the way, like you're saying, Jack.
I mean, it's certainly nice to see the team sticking up for each other. However, situational hitting and situational just being aware of where you're at in the game and what's on the line in the game. That Florida game, I mean, yeah, Farabee, I really appreciate it, but what the hell are you doing, man? I mean, they take that. How with like 6.5 minutes left in that game with the lead and on the power play, do they lose that game? Like, it is the definition of frustrating. Penalty by Brink, penalty by Farabee. Before you know it, it's over. And then, not much difference in Boston where, yeah, sure, where there's some diving going on, not every single time, but it was definitely goofy. But again, you're in that game too. And because of a silly, reckless play, you lose that game. And where they should have had 2 games where they should have really had 4 points, they come away with 1. That's frustrating. It's a young team. Like, people really get upset with certain players and the coaching and all that. And it's like, and that game upset me as well. But if we were like going for it, we were contenders. It was our time. The window is fully open. We've spent money and this is our team. And here we go. And they were losing games like this. I'd be pulling my hair out of my head. I probably would have lost my voice. I'd be freaking out. But they're in the stages of learning still. Michkov is 19, now 20. He just came over. We have a three-headed monster at goalie. And I say that kind of, tongue in cheek because Erson is probably our best goalie, but like, are we there yet? No, we're still trying to figure things out. That's why we have 3 goalies on the NHL roster at this time. We don't have centers. Like, we're working on it, So the fact that certain people are treating this team like they should be going for the cup, it's still a learning season. And that's why I think the right people are in place for it. And it's showing, they're still good enough. They've held on to enough of what was there, the Konechnys, the Couturiers, and even the Sanheims to a degree, and mixed it in with the youthfulness. And it's still going to take time for it to become a force, and they still have to add to it for it to become a force. We're still just seeing who stays and who goes and what contracts we're going to get out of and what we're going to get for said contract. So to be so hard on the team, while it sucks, it's nothing more than a learning moment for me right now. Yes, in the moment that night I was upset, but I wasn't calling for anybody's heads or jobs. Or like a couple of weeks ago, people were saying Forrester's got to go. That's utterly ridiculous. And I brought that up before. It's like he's going through his second year in the NHL. There's adjustments. The league adjusts for you. You adjust to the life. Maybe things came too easy for him. You got to figure things out. You got to work harder at all times. These guys everybody's growing. Everybody's growing. And people are so quick to fire this guy. He's got to be traded. This isn't working. It's absolutely silly. So if you just sit back, let things develop, you realize the team's having a pretty good season. And no matter what, that TK contract, I understand it's not even year one yet, looks like a damn good deal because he's been killing it. Kuss doesn't look half bad, all things considered. Still early. Sanheim with a complete turnaround season. All three goalies look pretty solid. I know we'll get into more of that later. Ristolainen's turned it around. Holy, who saw that coming? Brink's a perfectly servable third-line player who could be tossed into a deal down the pipe. Frost is up and down. That's a whole other conversation within itself. But Tippett's starting to score again. What's he, 4-4 or 5-5 for goals in a game? Like, absolute streak. And obviously the gem of it all, Michkov, was really all that matters. So to have issues with anything with this team at this point is it's silly to me. Sure, could things be better? Of course. When couldn't they be? But all I can see is positives right now. And Michkov's leading the way by a far margin. And that is phenomenal to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to toss this out there. Since starting the season 1-5-1, the Flyers are 12-7-3. Right. And for me, that crappy start is in the distant past. The Flyers have been playing well, is my point. And I can think of 5 games right now where they should have won. They should have 2 points in those 5 games, whether they lost in overtime or in regulation. There's a game against Carolina that comes to mind, a game against Vegas that shouldn't have gone to overtime, where I think they were up 3-0 at one point or something. The game against Florida, they should have won 2 points. And the game against Boston, that's another point. So if my math is right, that's at least 6 points right there that they should have. And they're just not there yet, but they're knocking on the door, at least from my perspective. I want to point out that at the moment, they are they're tied for a wild card spot. They're ahead of a team like the New York Rangers, who the Rangers have 2 games in hand, but they're a dumpster fire. Like, if you look down the standings right now, the Flyers are the second wild card, and the teams behind them, in my opinion, are not real threats. They're all kind of, stuck in the mud or, on the downslope kind of things, whereas the Flyers are I'm projecting them to go up as this season goes on. So in my opinion, there's a really good shot at them making the playoffs. They're currently 9 points behind a team like New Jersey, and I'm pointing out New Jersey because they have 2 games in hand. If the Flyers close out a couple of those games and they win their next 2 games, we're talking about the Flyers and the Devils being neck and neck. And, New Jersey's kind of one of those sexy teams that a lot of analysts were talking about during the offseason. So I guess the whole point of this conversation is the Flyers aren't that far away. They're improving. They have depth scoring. They have depth on D. And I would like to talk about some of the D. You mentioned Rasmus Ristolainen. Emil Andre came out of nowhere. And Jack, if the viewers and listeners have been listening to our show, they've heard us talk about Emil Andre potentially being the power play 1 quarterback. And that's what he is already. So either, they have guys, they have prospects, there's no reason to rush. I know a lot of people were upset about Jiricek. Didn't he just get sent back to the minors with Minnesota? Maybe he's not as NHL ready as people thought. So that's interesting. Emil Andre, on the other hand, looks like an NHL defenseman in every sense of the word. So the negativity doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. In a rebuilding team, it's always going to take time to figure things out. I think making reactionary moves during the course of a season would be a mistake, right? Imagine if they traded Forster. People are down on Tippett. Tippett and Forster are what they are. They're going to be streaky scorers. At best, I think 60-point players. Maybe they'll sprinkle in a couple 30-goal seasons. If you're expecting more than that, you're probably going to be disappointed. I don't know. But yeah, I think the clear the clear fault on this team, as you identified in the offseason, Jack, is the center position. And from my perspective, what I think is at some point that will be addressed, but I don't think that there needs to be an immediate need to address it, because things are okay. Sure, would it be better if they had a guy? Absolutely, but let's see what we have in some of these other guys, Brink, Andre. Like, who are we moving? You have to give up something to get something. Like, there was a comment in here, and Oakham, I'm sorry to kind of put you on blast here, but that doesn't get it done for Marco Rossi. Not even close, So, you have to be willing to give up something for a player, and the other team has to want your assets. It takes two to tango, So I think we'll see that eventually. I don't think it needs to happen now. Well, if they get hot near the deadline, I would start to maybe look out for a move like that. We'll see.
Yeah, that would ultimately be best. I do worry a little bit because I've said they don't need to do anything this year. This is the year they can see things out. I would like to see them get more roster changeover going into next year for sure, and I hope we see some of that at the deadline itself. But that would be something if they were to. I'm more so worried about while they're figuring things out and waiting for the perfect time when the team's ready to make a trade. Somebody like Rossi gets moved to another team, in another deal. Because we already discussed how tough it is to find anybody available at center who fits your timeline as well. You want a young center. You want somebody young. Draft caliber definitely helps. I don't know how hot people are on Zegras right now with things the way they are in Anaheim. So Rossi seems to be the golden goose right now. And if you just because you're waiting things out, you're a little gun shy, on pulling the trigger on a guy like Frost or one of your defensemen that you discussed that you really don't need because of the emergence of other guys like Andre. And then you're still waiting to see, and then you miss out on a player like that. And then it's like, well, now who are you looking for? Yeah. So there is a little bit of that, but at the same time, you can't rush it either. So, at the end of the day, I look at the team how they started. They jumped 4 teams since their horrible start in their own division. And not that Columbus is great, but they were like a 500 team. It's not like they were 3-14 or anything. Like they've been hanging in there for as rough as their season has been going, all things considered. And they're the worst team in our division. Our division's no picnic. We've passed the Islanders, the Penguins, and now the Rangers. And it's, for where this team started, that's pretty damn good. And when you consider some of the names that got us there, Michkov and Andre, they're young. That's awesome. They are a part of the freaking future to come. Forrester's tipped in. He's tipped it in there. Tippett's starting to score. We've mentioned some other names, CK obviously, but it's a lot of young guys that have seemed to be doing it. The goaltending. I don't know how you can be upset where they are at this point in the season. They've made some young mistakes like teams always do.
Yeah.
And in the moment it sucks. But when I just don't understand how after you analyze that you can't feel like, well, ultimately so far things are good and they're going to get it figured out. Why wouldn't they? I wouldn't say every move, but most moves that have been made have pretty much panned out. Like Sanheim and Risto come to mind. Michkov comes back from being benched. He has 17 points in 13 games, leads rookies, point per game player. Like, holy shit. Like, I mean, what more could you ask for? So it's a little baffling to me, but when you sit back and look at everything, things are good.
Yeah. And we think they're only going to get better. So speaking of getting better, Flyers got 2 players back from the IR this week in Jamie Drysdale and Sam Urson. I'm of the opinion that I'm not sure how hurt Jamie Drysdale actually was. I think it was more so, they had the advantage of being able to keep him out of the lineup and, maybe study some film, that kind of thing, maybe get him up to speed because he didn't look good 5-on-5. Torts came out and said something like, he doesn't think Drysdale's ever going to be, up to snuff defensively. So we need to get the most out of him offensively. And that's fair. I thought Drysdale came in and looked, as good as he's looked maybe all season since coming back from the IR. And hopefully he can give the team a boost. He set up a nice play for, I think it was Tippett's goal last night. Hopefully we see more of that from Drysdale. And then Sam Urson, who I don't want to say that we forgot about because we didn't, but the Russian guys were holding down the fort. And all of a sudden, the Flyers maybe have 3 viable options in goal, which could present a problem. And we can talk about that. But Jack, your thoughts on Drysdale and Urson returning to the lineup?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't ask for much more. I mean, Urson's looked solid. Unfortunately, the numbers there, the goals against are, it's a shame. But if you look at his first game back, there was like 2 own goals, a hell of a deflection, a breakaway. Other than that, he was solid. I think he went 10 of 10 in the first period of his first game back. And then against Columbus, that game was 5-1. It was basically over, and they're scoring some garbage time goals. It's hurt his stats a bit. But when I look at him in important gameplay minutes, he's answered the bell for the most part. So I really can't be too upset with his return. I'm happy with his return. He's didn't make it into my top 3 stars of the game in any of those games, but he's definitely been the Urson that I remember, and he's only going to get more settled and better. So I can't complain about Urson at all. Definitely not the reason they lost, and a part of the reason they won. And then Drysdale, outside of maybe the first period, maybe the half game of this first game back, I've liked everything I saw. It was a shame that the goal was taken away from him for Konechny being in the crease, because he certainly could have used it. But ultimately, the facts remain, he did all the right things on that play to drive play. He's been nifty. He's been making nifty passes and nifty moves. He's been a different Drysdale since before the injury, at very least. So I hope he can keep that style of play up, because if he can, that's exactly what they need out of Drysdale. So I cannot complain at all about either's return to the lineup.
For sure. And so let's kind of get to our one of our interactive segments of the night. And, if you're watching live, drop your trust meter from a scale of 1 to 10 in the comments for the Flyers 3 goalies. Let's start off with Sam Urson, Jack. Like, as far as trust goes, where are you on a scale of 1 to 10 with Sam Urson?
I'd probably say I'm probably around an 8. I don't know how you exactly weight the scale. I'm going to assume 10 is like a top 10 goalie in the league, and a 9's a good starter. And I think he's pretty close to being a pretty good starter, but I'm not going to quite put him there yet. When he's in net, I expected the teams to win, because I think the team's good. And I think if we're playing a really tough opponent, he's going to make it awfully tough for them. And I can see some of the goals that go in against Urson are, he very rarely do I look at a goal and think, he wish he had that one back. Of all the goals I've seen with Urson since he's returned back, maybe one was like that. He got pucks bouncing off of his stick, Ristolainen's leg, deflection up high, stuff that you can't control because deflections like that. So I think 8's a fair number. I think it'll probably stay around 8 throughout the year. We'll see. Ultimately, we'll see. The defense has been better. PK's been a little rough though. So I think 8's a fair number.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. And so next on the list here, we'll save Kolosov for last, because I think Fedotov, I'm curious to see what everyone thinks about Fedotov still. So let's get him out of the way. And so Ivan Fedotov, trust meter. I'll go first here. I think I don't know if I fully trust him yet. And I think I mentioned that on our last show, or maybe it was a post game, where he's looked solid, but it's like a dog that you're around a few times, and there's the chance he's going to bite you in the ass. And you start to trust him a little bit, and then he does bite you in the ass, and it's like, maybe let's back it up a little bit on this guy. And so for Fedotov, that's how I feel. I don't know if I'm ready to put my full faith in him. And Torts ended up coming out, and what was the game where they pulled him after a 2-0 start? I think it was against Florida.
That was Florida, yeah.
And I forget who it was that asked. They said, why the switch? And he's basically, in so many words, he said, because he looked like crap. So he's still going to have those times, those games. We're seeing some 5 and 6s in the chat here. I'm going to go I'm going to go 4 on Fedotov. I think there is something there to work with. But as far as trust goes, I'm below halfway. How about you, Jack?
So when I was first asked the question, my mind went to like around 6.5. And that was more so because of more recent play. So two things that I think of is his earlier start to the season. I'm going to have to ding him for that. And then I think about how what you just said about him getting pulled. He has that in him, unfortunately, where if he gives up a couple and I can't even really kill him that badly for the goals that he gave up against Florida. But like if he's out of sync and he's giving up goals early, he just has that effect where he can just demoralize the rest of the team faster. That I can't feel all that confident about him. I'm going to the game tomorrow. I don't know if they posted the lineup yet. He's the last goalie I want them to start. I want to see Erson or Kolosov, then Fedotov. I'm gonna give him a 5. I'm not as harsh. You said 4, right?
Yep.
I'll say 5. I don't think that's too far off. I'm just not there yet. So I'll say 5.
All right. So it seems like Oakham and Shadow are pretty much in the same ballpark. Oakham put up a 5. Shadow put up a 6 for Fedotov. And all right. So now let's get to Alexei Kolosov, who is maybe the most fun goaltender to watch of the 3. Has been playing well of late. Jack, where is your trust meter with Alexei Kolosov?
So I've actually pretty much liked what I've seen from Kolosov. I'm going to go with the 7 with Kolosov. I do think the defense, from what I've seen, they typically have worse outings again when Kolosov's in net. Now, it's a little uneven, based on starts, but I think like it doesn't really happen to Fedotov until he already kind of goes off the rails. And Kolosov, like he makes a 10-bell save against Florida, and they don't clear the puck, and it's still winds up in the back of the net. And he got killed on the penalty kill. Like he just kept going against that team. They were finding guys wide open, and sure, could he be a little bit better? Of course, that's why he's a 7 and not a 10. But like they team that, especially recently, have hung him out to dry. I think if he were to come in and play tomorrow, it'd be a different outing, especially because I think the team's starting to trend a little bit more upwards, and I would like to see him. We'll see what happens, but I definitely trust him more than Fedotov.
Yeah, and I think we're on the same page. If we were to rank them, I think it sounds like we would both go Erson, Kolosov, and Fedotov, and we have Dave put up an 8 on this, on a 1 to 10 trust, and Oakham puts up a 6, and I'm gonna agree with Oakham. I think I'm at a 6 with Kolosov. I feel better about him in goal than I do Fedotov. I enjoy watching him more, but I'm not sure that's fair to factor into the trust. I think 6 is, it's more than halfway, but it's not quite. I don't trust him as much as Erson. He may have more potential than Erson.
And I think that him having the highest ceiling of the 3 goalies, in my opinion, I think that skewed my number a little bit. I like seeing him play. We'll see what happens when Zavragin gets here, and even Bjornsson and whatnot. But as far as youth and potential, Erson's been damn good. I just think when I think ceiling, I think Kolosov has the highest ceiling of the 3, and I feel like we're gonna see flashes of it, and that makes me feel more comfortable with him in net. And he's been pretty good as well. I definitely can't say that for Fedotov.
No. Yeah, and it's it sounds like the viewers and listeners kind of are in the same boat. Dave comments here, he's very athletic and he's quick. Like I said, he's fun to watch, man. Even warming up, like he's fast in the crease, like going side to side. He is on the smaller side, but makes up for it with his speed. Like I'm not going to compare him to goalies when we were all growing up, because I think Oakham and Dave are around our age, and we were able to watch guys like Ed Belfour and Dominic Hasek and guys who were unique in their style and the way they played the position. It wasn't a bunch of cookie cutter goalies back in the day, where I'm not saying Kolosov reminds me of those guys, but at least from what I can see, he's unique in his style, which is fun for me to watch, So if I guess if we're going to compare a goalie to one of the goalies from the past, Fedotov's makes some of those saves. Remember the 2-pad stack?
That was nice. Yeah. That was nice to see. That was one of his better games. That's why I think I gave him the highest rating. I'm thinking things like that. But you can't shake the start of the season. And I feel like with him, it's a confidence thing can really be an issue, especially if it's down. So Kiprusoff was a hell of a goalie.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's move on here. Let's talk. We brought up Michkov earlier in the show, but he did something off the ice the other night worth talking about. And he was ejected from the Boston game, or I think it was the Boston game. There was some stuff that went on that night in terms of Boston accusing Flyers players of diving and Torts showing up in the media. And was that the night, or was it the Utah game where Michkov walked off, Jack? I can't recall.
That was Utah, where the referee blew the whistle right in his face and should have had that whistle shoved down his throat. I still can't believe that shit. That was the diving accusations was Boston, and Michkov getting tossed and signing something on the way out was Utah.
Yeah, so let's so you had something that you wanted to bring up with the Boston game, and then we'll get to the Michkov autograph.
I mean, we all heard Torts in the hallway after the game going off about not teaching his players to dive and how maybe he should. He's not far off. I don't think every call against Boston was a dive, but there certainly were. And the referees, they just fell for every single one of them. It was unbelievable. And it happens, a lot of people like to cry. Oh, he's making excuses. I'm like, yeah, I mean, people do that, but I don't have a dog in this fight in the sense that Flyers aren't winning the cup. So there's no reason to cry foul over anything. No, this is legit what happened. And there's plenty of evidence for it. I thought we would just get over it, move on, but Torts made us. Yeah, he's upset. There's a reason he doesn't talk to the media sometimes. Everybody wants to blame, the whole. He's got to hold the players accountable. He's got to be accountable. Of course, Torts don't give a rat's ass what you think or what the reporters think. He hates the media. He hates the reporters. He does it because he has to. When he's calm, he will go talk to you and try to answer questions. Last year, when he forced himself out there, he threw players under the bus. He threw goalies under the bus. He got himself suspended. He got himself fined. He's just not doing that stuff. What does Torts have to prove to you? What does he have to prove to any of you? He's won a Stanley Cup. He's mostly takes over bad teams and turns them into good teams. Pretty much everybody, the Rangers, when he became the head coach, was a bad team. Yeah, maybe that one season with the Canucks, they were a good team, but they were trending downward. But I mean, he took over Tampa Bay when they were bad and turned them into a Stanley Cup winner. He took over Columbus, was at the bottom of the league, and we all know what he did in Columbus, making the playoffs and sweeping Tampa Bay and whatnot. And what he's done with the Flyers here. You can't argue with the numbers and the success. We thought would be a dumpster fire for years to come. We have so many players we thought were going to be garbage, and we'd be paying people to take them off our hands and become assets. So I don't care if he doesn't talk to the media. But when he's an emotional guy, we all know that. We all understand what we got when he came here. And sure enough, in an emotional moment where he is on the microphone, he goes after Boston. And Joe Sacco, the head coach of the Boston Bruins, did respond. Nothing too serious. Just that's not our group. I mean, that's not the way our team plays. That wasn't us. And it kind of I can't remember. I'm not quoting him, but it was a kind of alluding to. It was kind of a one night thing, which I kind of agree with. I don't think Boston's known for diving or anything. I just think in that game they took advantage of the referees being nuts.
Yeah, I think so too. And so let's move on to the Utah game because, like you're talking about there, with the ref blowing the whistle in his face. What did you think about Michkov's reaction to that, Jack?
I think he took it easy on him.
do you want him to tone that back a little bit, or do you want to see more?
I want to see more. I mean, first off, it's hockey. A lot of people get so butthurt today, and oh my God, he's gonna do something. That's the fire. That's the competitiveness. If I'm asking him to pull that back, I'm asking him to pull his competitiveness back. We've had so many players here in the recent past, the recent history, that did not care if this team lost. I want that mentality gone from the locker room. And a guy like Michkov hates losing. And I like that he hates losing. I like that when the game's basically over and he takes a little shove, he turns it into a big deal. Like, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the referee blows the whistle right in his ear, which is not getting enough attention, that was some bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Disrespectful bullshit. And if Michkov would have backhanded him, I would have been pissed if he got suspended and fined, which he would have. That is so unprofessional by the referee to do that shit. So I'm glad that he sticks up for himself, he sticks up for his team, and he just is an emotional guy and wears his emotions on his sleeve. That kind of mentality, the teammates will feed off of it. They will soak that in as well, and that's the kind of rhetoric I want in our locker room for our core and our culture to have, instead of what we're used to with the Jake Voraceks of the world when they were done playing for this team and just like, yeah, well, we lost. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You guys want to get drunk?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry. Like, he was a great player once and I loved him. I bought his jersey, but like when times got tough, he just checked out. And I hate that shit.
Yep. For sure. All right. So let's get to more specifically the autograph. And what I thought it was funny that so Jackie ended up asking Torts, I think it was yesterday, what he thought of the Michkov autograph. And Torts, he said he didn't know. I think sometimes you can kind of tell when Torts is kind of not telling the truth. And for me, it didn't seem like he was being completely honest. I'm not sure why. Maybe he thought it would benefit him to pretend that he didn't know about it. But when asked about it, it almost seemed like he, and I want to know what you think, Jack, or what people in the comments, it seemed to me that he kind of laughed, whether it was a nervous laugh or what, but he was like, oh, he did what? And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. You know, it's tough for him to endear. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's tougher for him to endear himself to the fans because of the language barrier. So doing something like that, I think, meant a lot to the fans of Philadelphia. And it really, you know, he's endearing himself already with his play on the ice, which is what you want, number one, because he's not pandering. He can't pander to the fans, you know. So to do something like that, I think was what Flyers fans have been starving for. You know, they want a guy that wants to be here, that loves to be here, that loves the fans, and is a superstar on the ice. And it sure seems like at 20 years old, which is blowing me away, Matvei Michkov is going to be that guy, Jack. What do you think?
Hands down. Absolutely. I mean, we talked about it at the draft. We were like, we don't understand why he's falling. I get the Russian factor, but the skill is too much to gamble on and not get. You know, he should have went number 2 overall, and he's showing it. I mean, he's making a case that he should have went number 1 overall. I mean, we'll see. That's going to take a little bit more time. Those two will be tied together for a while. But the fact that we're even in that conversation is incredible. We got a real gift here, and he's just a gamer. He's already showing he's a Flyer through and through, and it's incredible.
Yeah. And so I have a list here. Here's the last 20 players to average at least a point per game in their age 20 season or younger. Minimum 25 games played. This is via Ryan Walsh. I guess he took the list off of Hockey Reference. So I'm just going to read some of the names on this list here. And Austin Matthews is on the list. Connor McDavid, Steven Stamkos, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Alex Ovechkin, Eric Lindros, who is the second most on this list behind Sidney Crosby, Jaromir Jagr, and Joe Sakic is also on the list. So Michkov is in absolute elite company 27 games into his Flyers career, NHL career, at just 20 years old. And it seems like you mentioned 17 points in 13 or 12 games since the benching. He's only getting better. And it's almost scary. Like, you have to, I have to keep, excuse me. I have to keep kind of reminding myself that this kid is only 19, 20 years old. And we're seeing this kind of production. It's blowing my mind a little bit, because where's the ceiling? How good can he be? You know?
He's only 19, 20 years old. He's got plenty to learn. Culture shock, first coming over from Russia. I mean, to see the poise that he has and how he's handled stuff. You have grown men out there who get benched and like it screws up the team in the locker room. He takes his benchings, he learns from it, he comes back even better. The first off, the fact that he's that kind of player who doesn't get all bent out of shape, if God forbid he gets benched because like he knows everything or something, is phenomenal. It's a huge step because I can't stand players like that who just I was mistreated, woe is me. Instead, it's the other way. It's like he takes it, comes out firing, and he's just everything about the kid. His confidence, his swagger is just a superstar. Like, and this is we're just scratching the surface, which means Michkov. You can tell this season is going to be fun and memorable, but the sky is going to be the limit.
Yeah, it's exciting to think about. Like he's the type of player that's going to attract other star players. Like you need that guy. He's the guy that's going to recruit. Like he wants to win. And I think that above all else, like his drive and desire, if you listen to him answer questions and there's a question that pops out in mind, like he's really mature. Like it's not all about him. There was a question a while back. Somebody asked, what do you think about, the extra hits that are being put on you or the tougher hits? Do you know what his reply was? It wasn't, oh yeah, no big deal. It was, my teammates are getting hit the same exact way I am, like he deflects to, I'm not being treated any different than anybody else. You know what I mean? Where maybe maybe somebody with personality issues or whatever would say, it's a joke and someone needs to do something about it kind of thing. He had another quote the other night. I don't remember exactly what it was, but the end of his answer was, we want to win games. It's not about my personal achievements at 20 years old. Like right now he could be like, yeah, I'm here in a new country. I don't know the language. Everything is new to me. And I'm dominating as a 20-year-old in the NHL.
Dominating.
You know what I mean? Instead, it's I'm here to win games. We want to win. And, I think after that game they had lost. So just really impressed with Michkov from top to bottom, man. It's still crazy to me that he's ours. He's on our team. Blows me away.
I haven't seen anything like this really since, you got to say, Lindros. Drew was a great player, but like he didn't have the hype. And he came up with such a good team. He almost, well, I won't say he went unnoticed. He scored some big ass goals, but it was a different rise. Like this is 19 years old. Like what? Come on. Like that's unheard of especially for us. We're used to other teams always having that young stud. And the way this all went down is so unique within its own right. It's just, I don't know how people can complain at this point with what they do, but everybody's different. I just hope that we can start to assemble the rest of the pieces and, figure out our goaltending situation as well.
For sure. And so speaking of figuring out the pieces, let's get to our final segment of the show. And this is also for the listeners and viewers, so make sure you chime in the comments. There are a few people that mentioned theirs already. Jack, if you had to move one Flyer today, who would it be and why?
Is this based on the potential return or just somebody I need to see jettisoned from the roster?
Yeah, maybe both.
If considering the potential return and now's not the best time, he just scored a goal. The first name that popped into my head was Morgan Frost. I just was tired of the saga. I wouldn't do it right now. I would want to see him pick up his value a little bit and then maybe see what you have. They also need center, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to move him. But like, I'm just tired of the saga. He's going to be a restricted free agent he's got 1 year. What's he going to do? Sign another 1 year prove it deal? Is he going to play hardball? I just move on. Just get the best you can get and move on. He's the one that comes to mind. I think I would be forcing any other name at this point. Farabee kind of pops in my head. But I do have, that's one. Frost is more for the future. But one that I would like to see move right now, also not feasible for different reasons, would be Fedotov. I look into our goaltending situation, and I don't see much of a future with Fedotov. If there's any way they can capture what he's done now, and maybe it takes a little bit and get something for that while also clearing up their goaltending situation to be a win-win. But there's nothing. There's not a person I'll just leave it at that. Like, those are my two. I'm sorry I chose two. One's more for the future that I don't see happening right away. Another one would be more of a immediate fix.
Sure. And both good answers there. Before I get to my thoughts, I'll read aloud some of the viewer comments. And this is from Zach O. So Zach O picked 4. Farabee, Frost, Risto, and Zamula. Anything to get some pieces at center. Dave commented earlier, Farabee is his choice. Oakham said Frost, Cates. Let me see. Do we have anybody else down here? That's all we got for tonight, guys. Who do you guys want to move? So who would I want to move right here and right now? Who would have the value to get what they need? Would it be a 1-for-1? I don't know. Sorry, guys. My throat is dry as shit tonight. I don't know what's going on. But I think Farabee is still my guy. I think I still want to move Joel Farabee, and I'm not sure if his value is taking a hit or not. He kind of fluctuates throughout the lineup. Maybe he's a guy that needs to play in the top 6 to produce. But I think we all expect more than 4 goals and 11 points in 29 games from Joel Farabee. Jack, would you say that that's correct?
Yeah, he certainly seems to be the smart answer, the smart money. I just feel like he's almost breaking out of it. He's got a goal, but it was going to go in anyway. But whatever, where you're supposed to be. Like, I feel like he's about to break through to something. I know a lot of last year hinges on what we have, what he's capable of. Well, the games get too hard again, and him breaking out of it temporarily for a little bit winds up not being all that much. He's young enough, the contract's okay enough that he has value, and we got a plethora of wingers. The only other name I'd add to it, and if I was looking at this just based on value, not based on what we're trying to do this year, Ristolainen is a name that I got to consider, where you're looking at giving up assets to get rid of him. Now you're looking at getting assets and getting good assets to move on from him. And while I love what he brings, his physicality and whatnot, and I kind of want to see him play in the playoffs with the Flyers and maybe get even more for him, moving a defenseman opens up the door for a Hellsgrons, or get some more consistency from guys who are going to be in the box. And they got to make room eventually anyway. It's the idea is Bonk's going to push for a spot next year. And then Lord knows who else or whatever they potentially acquire or draft, and we'll see. So moving on from some guys that are probably not going to be a part of your core, I don't think, or your core moving forward, I don't think Risto's that guy. If you can get something for him now or at the deadline, whatever, he's based on the value and how he's been playing, I think it could happen. That would be somebody I would like to see moved for those reasons.
Yep, totally. I thought it was interesting that a team like Anaheim traded for Jacob Trouba, who Anaheim already has a guy like Radko Gudas. And not that I'm comparing Ristolainen in any way to Jacob Trouba, because that situation was a little bit more unique. It was pretty well documented that the Rangers wanted to move on from Trouba. He's making $8 million a year. Ristolainen's making $5 million, shorter contract, I think. And so New York, I think they got an older prospect and a 4th-round pick. Now, I don't believe the Flyers will get that for Risto, but I guess my point is that these sort of defensemen are still being, teams are still want them, So Ristolainen is going to be interesting. We talked about him on the last show. I made my thoughts and feelings known. I really enjoy watching him play, and but I agree with you. He's a guy that should be moved. I won't be happy about it unless the return is, really, really good. But it's something that should happen. He's 29 years old, I believe, so I'm not sure he fits the rebuild time frame sort of thing. Maybe you can use that $5 million for something else, when the time comes. So Risto's a good answer. Farabee's a good answer. Frost. Fedotov was a good one too. The Flyers have depth, so they have the ammunition to make deals. They have an abundance of picks. They have 6 picks in the first 2 rounds in the upcoming NHL draft. Olsen Math chiming in for the first time tonight, Jack. Let's get his comment up there. I always hear Buffalo as a landing spot for Farabee. What would you want back from Buffalo, Jack?
Well, as far as position, I think the only thing you can really look at would be center. And I don't know who they're going to give up for that. I don't know how I feel about Krebs plus, because if you're just getting Krebs back, you're losing that trade. So then maybe you look at defense, and I don't know who they're really moving on defense unless you add more to that pot. I don't know if you toss in like I really don't even know, somebody else to make that, a Zamula or something, to make that trade go down. I understand the want having Farabee in Buffalo, but I don't know the pieces that they would send us back or anything that outside of just flat out draft picks that would be something that really, drive home about. The center, that they traded a center to Colorado already, and you're not getting Cousins in that deal. So who's left?
What do you think it would take to get Cousins?
Farabee. It's tough. I'm trying. So let me pull up some of Cousins' stats. I know he's not quite where they wanted him to be. I know there was some trending upwards.
He seems to be having sort of a Farabee-esque season this year after regressing a little bit last year as well.
Right. So he's got over 300 NHL games under his belt. He's 23. He's 23 years old. He'll be 24 about mid-February. So he's still very young. Where Farabee's probably around the same age, right?
Yep, same age.
Yeah. I think he's like a couple months older. So like, I don't see. So this year, 28 games, 6 goals, 7 assists. If I'm Buffalo, it's almost like you're probably hanging on to him at that point, because what are you gonna do? You're getting no value. I mean, so I think it's a non-starter, and centers should bring back more, but you're not going to get much. Just looking at their roster, I don't really see outside of picks like a player deal here. At the beginning of the season, it seemed to make a little bit more sense, but with the way their season is going, I don't see much. I mean, I would love to get Benson, but we know that'll never happen, and it's another winger. We talked about Krebs. We talked about Cousins. Who's left? Jack Quinn, Tage Thompson. How much is he making again?
Zach mentions Tage Thompson, but I wonder though, like, I don't know. Did he get paid already?
I think he did. Let me look up Tage Thompson, because I can't remember how much he got paid. Is he contract? Come on.
He's in year 2 of 7.
Whew. And he's making he got 50 mil, just shy, $1 shy of 50 mil on a 7-year deal. So what's that? At over 7.1 yearly, which is a boatload of money. That's almost a Kevin Hayes contract. He is a center, and he's just turned 27 years old. That's interesting. He's got almost a point per game player. He scores some goals, 15 goals, 7 assists. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a Farabee deal, but that's an interesting one. I mean, if Buffalo's trading him, though, they're rebuilding again.
Yeah.
He's their guy. So, I mean, Cousins, I can see is a failed in their view. He just needs to move on. But Thompson, that's a big deal, first off. And yeah, they're getting pieces and picks back. They're telling their fans, although they're already telling their fans. Did you hear their I think it was their owner or their GM? I can't remember.
Well, what did he say, Jack?
He was just like, well, Buffalo isn't palm trees and the beach or the ocean. It's not a destination. It's New York, but it's the coldest part of New York. And I'm not quoting him. I'm just throwing out his bullshit excuses. So yeah, it was funny.
As much as that was funny, I found myself agreeing with them. It was just crazy to hear a GM come out and say that.
To cry like that?
Such a defeatist mentality, like, figure out, like, dude, you're drafting bottom 5 every year. So what are you talking about? Or like, didn't they trade players like Sam Reinhart and Jack Eichel and to Vegas and Florida? And yeah, like, they traded these guys. They're not going off and losing them in free agency.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know what's going on with the organization, dude. But I get what he's saying. Today's player, free agent wise, Nashville's a good example of what they did over the summer. Today's player, that kind of shit matters. Location, tradition doesn't matter as much to today's player. So if the I don't want to, make this shit on the Flyers kind of thing. I just want to get this point across. Today's player doesn't so much give a shit about the Broad Street Bullies, and the Flyers tradition. They can bring the culture back, and you can attract players with culture, I believe, still, and be a top flight organization, all that. But if you had to choose between living in Buffalo, New York, Jack, where the taxes are, insane out the ass, it's cold, forever, snows all the time, or you had the option to sign in Nashville, Vegas, Florida, where it's warm, there's no income tax in the state. What would you choose?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely should be something with that income tax thing going on, but to your point, him coming out and crying like that, it's like, dude, what a bad look. We all know, we all get it. You don't have to say it. Like, we all get it, man. Like, that's pathetic.
Right.
That's just like, I feel like he's going to get fired soon. If you're doing shit like that, then forget it.
Yeah, it sure seems like it. That's a great point by you there. So, Snickers mentioned, I think he mentioned Peterka a couple of times, Oakham as well.
I'd be surprised if Buffalo were even considering moving him. He's a right wing. Farabee's a left wing, and he's performing much better at this time. I mean, he was 2 goals shy of a 30-goal season last year, finished with 50 points. So he scores more than he assists. That was a full 82 season, but like they would be selling high, but the kid is only 22. He'll be 23 in January, in mid-January. I mean, that's young. Like I really don't think they're moving him. I'd be all about it. It's another winger, which doesn't make a lot of sense for Philly, but I am of the ilk. Just get the best players available, and you should be able to make other moves to make it work if you have balls. But I can't see Buffalo parting with him.
Yeah, we'll see, right? Like Buffalo's one of those organizations where they shouldn't be doing what they're doing, but
they tend to hold on to guys, though. They tend to hold on to guys. They make a lot of interesting free agency decisions. My favorite was when they signed Vinny Leno to a huge deal, and that immediately didn't pan out.
Yeah.
What's weird to me is like they acquired a guy like Bowen Byram, and he was like rumored to be being moved. I'm like, what? I thought you were like shoring up your defense with Owen Power and Dahlin, and and even Samuelson's pretty good. And no, there seems to always be something funny going on out there.
Maybe we can get Michael Gallo back on to kind of give us the scoop, see what's going on in Buffalo. Maybe there is a trade in the future. Who knows?
I'll be all for it. I just don't, the guys I feel like are not attainable and show that they would be rebuilding. Other guys don't make any sense because you don't want to have nothing. Like you're going to a guy like Peterka for Farabee. What else are we throwing in? Michkov? Like Christ. I'm being dramatic, obviously, but like that trade's not happening with Philly. That guy, if that guy's traded, it's elsewhere.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, so we're about 58 minutes into our show tonight, Jack. The Flyers play tomorrow night against the Detroit Red Wings. Let me get the schedule up here because I think this is their last home game for at least a week. Come on now. All right, so they're at home tomorrow night against Detroit. Then they travel up to Minnesota on Saturday before being off for 3 days, and then they start a back-to-back next week on Wednesday and Thursday. They play the Red Wings again on Wednesday, and they're back home for a quick 2-game set against the Kings on Thursday and the Columbus Blue Jackets on Saturday. Jack, of the Flyers next, let's go 2 games because we're going to have a show next week. How do you see these next 2 games playing out for the Flyers? Detroit tomorrow and Minnesota Wild for an afternoon game at 2 p.m. on Saturday.
I see them winning tomorrow. One, I'm going to the game. My son's not. My son was the lucky charm. I'm going with Cousins. So the lucky charm's not going. But I still see them beating Detroit. Detroit's in an interesting spot. And then I think the Wild's a good team. It's more of a revenge game for our 7-5 win, which my son was at against them before. So I see them going 1-1. They beat Detroit in regulation. They lose to the Wild in regulation. Is the way I look at it.
Okay, fair enough. I also see a win tomorrow night. At least we should see one. And then they played Minnesota pretty tough there. So we'll see. Even if they can sneak a point out on the road, the Flyers are somehow a better road team than home team. They're 2 games under 500 at home. They've blown a few games at home. I think we mentioned some earlier against Vegas, Florida, Boston. Or Boston was in Boston. So, but
just keep in mind, Minnesota is currently tied for first place in the entire league with Winnipeg, and they only have 5 regulation losses. Well, the Flyers gave them one of them. So, and in their first one, I don't see that happening again.
Yeah, that was the Coots hat trick game.
Correct.
All right, so that's going to do it for our show tonight, I think. Jack, was there any kind of housekeeping that you wanted to sneak in here at the end?
No, nothing. I think we mentioned everything. Everybody who's back from injury, whatnot. We got no update on the Ryan Johansson situation. I can't think of anything. I think we got it all covered. I hope something happens to that dumbass referee who blew the whistle in Michkov's face. Michkov should win Rookie of the Year, yet every time I see a thing come out about who should win Rookie of the Year, due to underlying numbers, it was either Celebrini or Stankoven. It's anybody but Michkov, and that low key is really pissing me off.
Yeah,
it's like the fix is already in. The fix is already in. We're going to get to the end of the season. Michkov's going to have 80 points. That's a point per game because he missed 2 games. 80 points, and Celebrini, who has 71 points, is going to win because of underlying this and underlying that, and fuck off. Michkov should win Rookie of the Year.
You know what it is? It's probably good for clicks because in Dallas, if nobody gives a shit, I don't think if Stankoven doesn't win. And in San Jose, I mean, what market is crazier, San Jose or Philadelphia? So if you want to piss a bunch of people off and get a bunch of engagement, just put Michkov second all year. Philly fans will let you know.
If there's anything I learned growing up, is that the NHL and most major league sports will always make the wrong decision if it ultimately gets them more money. And it sucks, but it's the hard truth.
Yeah. All right. That's going to do it for episode 13 of season 7. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to subscribe and follow us on YouTube. Drop a comment, even chirp us if you want. Follow us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe. Set alerts so you're first to know when we drop a new show. And for all of our latest episodes, articles, and updates, head over to hwhockey.net. I do want to thank everyone real quick. We hit our first 10K video on YouTube. So huge shout out to Flyers fans for hanging out with us and watching our stuff. That really meant a lot to us. It's a big number for us, 10K. 10,000 views on one single video. So thank you everyone for that. It meant a lot. Jack and I are going to go celebrate sometime soon for that. So for Jack, I'm Jim. We'll see you guys tomorrow night after the Flyers Red Wings game. So good night. See you guys then. Bye-bye.
Let's go Flyers, baby.